Hello, Scoob Believers, and welcome to another edition of the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. And it's me, DJ Scoob, coming at you on whatever device you happen to be listening on. So today we're actually talking to a young lady named Dinalynn. Now, Dana is amazing. She has a brand new podcast that just came out. Happy to come across her. It's amazing. So it's called The Language of Play, and it has a lot to do with talking about your children and how you could be able to talk with them, express, understand what they're talking about. Now, Dinalynn started out as a speech language pathologist and did that for many, many years. And using that knowledge combined with her knowledge of children, decided to put something out into the world for everybody to learn from. She has some great, great stories. Definitely a cute story I want you to hear about with her grandchild. Oh, it's so cute. Anyway, before I get any deeper into what we're talking about here, let's listen to Dinalynn. Salutations, Scoop Believers, and we are here again with another amazing, brand spanking new entrepreneur. Today we're here with Dinalynn. Hi, Dina.
Hello, thank you for having me here today.
I'm so excited to have you on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. We've been putting this together for a little time, and I'm really glad we finally got it together.
Yay, me
Yeah.
too.
All right. So I'm going to start you off with a really kind of important, serious question. Okay. Are you ready?
hmm
All right. Are you a school believer?
Absolutely. How could I not be?
All right. Hey, we got our next school believer. Thank you, Neil, and thank you very, very much for being a school believer on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. All right, so please do me a favor and just tell me a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your entrepreneur adventure, and how long you've actually been doing it for.
This adventure that I'm doing now is less than a year. I have, as you know, just launched a podcast. And as I've been trying to figure out what it is that I'm going to do, I have been dabbling in all these different things, trying to whittle down what it was that I'm doing. And I landed in podcasting. And so now that's where I'm at. And I have really been enjoying the people that I meet and oh boy, the learning. Oh, the learning curve is so steep, but it's still been joyful and fun.
Yeah, that's actually part of the fun of an entrepreneur's venture is learning new things and meeting new people and people that want to support you and everything that you do. So you got a lot more of that coming to you. So,
Yay.
yeah. What made you want to start your business? What was the catalyst that kind of got you going?
I had a career as a speech language pathologist in the schools. And during that time, I was also a parent of my children as they grew through all the years. And while I was going through teacher training and speech pathology training as continuing education, I kept thinking, man, this would work at home. This would work with my kids. I should do this with my kids. So anyway, yes, of course, I implemented those things with my students, but I found that I would implement a lot of my learning with my kids. And I kept thinking, I should tell other parents this. And I sat on it for many years because when you work a teacher schedule and you're a parent, your world is full. And now my kids are out, and I decided that I'm going to do this. I'm going to share this information with parents. And, the information that I learned so much, it was geared towards children with speech and language difficulties. But those tricks and techniques and strategies work with all children. And not just for teachers to do, but for parents and anybody that works with children to do. So I want to just share that information because it's a good way to be with kids. It helps you to get behind, well, my phrase is get behind the eyes of the child to talk to them in the way their brain understands.
That's really important too, because when you talk to a child and they don't understand what you're talking about or even talking in their type of language, they're not going to comprehend what you're trying to say. So having that ability to be able to talk to a child like that is very, very important. From what I've heard from your podcast, I've been listening to her podcast. What's the name of your podcast again?
The language of play.
The language of, I love that, by the way. That's amazing. I've listened to everything that you've put out so far, and I do have a 16-year-old child, but I do have a 4-year-old granddaughter as well too. So it's something that I've actually been learning about, and I've raised 3 kids already, and I'm still learning stuff from you. So it's amazing that you're putting out that kind of information. I think anybody that's raising children at this point could benefit from it.
I think so too. Hence the reason I put it out. And also I too have a grandson, and it has been just wonderful to watch. Like, I didn't know this stuff when I raised my kids. It was the process of learning while I was raising them, the process of teaching while I was also raising them when I learned this. But now understanding this kind of thing, and my daughter does too. So we're looking at her son and the behavior he has. And it's so much different to look at his behavior and to see what is his understanding. And here's a real simple one, because he's only one. So she asked him if he wants some toast. And he's been studying body parts. So he grabs his feet and says, "Tss." So he was combining toast with toes, and he heard, the STS on
Yeah.
the end of the toast. And so we realized, yeah, that's what he understood, because his behavior showed us what he actually understood. And so he said yes while he grabbed his feet.
So when he grabs his feet, that means he wants toast? Or no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
He hasn't learned. What it really means is he didn't know there was another word about toes.
Oh, okay.
And he's trying to figure out, what are we talking about? Are we going to eat our toes? So he doesn't hear that difference. And so now, because that's just one example. Maybe it's a bad example if you have big kids, but you get the idea of how kids, they're understanding what they're hearing based on what they already know. And so they're attaching what they hear this next time onto their current knowledge. And we so often think, oh, of course he understands that. So like, he had toast yesterday, so he'll understand toast today. But what did he really understand is shown in his behavior. And he grabbed his feet. So he really didn't know we were talking about food or bread.
That's great. That is so awesome. I'm glad you actually went through that experiences with the other children, just so you can get the information that you need about raising children to us.
Yeah.
As adults that are raising children, I mean, that's great information. So thank you very much for putting that all together.
Thank you. Yes, it is coming together, and it's a continuous coming together. As I am new right now, as you and I are speaking, there are 7 published episodes. So I am a beginner.
Well,
It's coming.
what's the nice thing though is you started. That's the main thing, that you actually started something. And a lot of people that have the idea won't even start. I mean, they'll have the idea and they'll just keep that idea, but they won't actually take that first step to get across the start line. That's what I call that. It's getting across the start line to make those differences for other people, because there are, a lot of people are afraid, or they're afraid of failure, or they're afraid of what's going to happen. And so much is going through our mind. But once you actually get started, once you actually take that step, that first step towards something, then you're finding yourself, oh, this is going to work. Well, what's my next step? Then what's my next step? And now you've put out a podcast, you've put out 7 episodes. And I got to tell you, every episode that I've listened to has had a lot of great information for anybody that's raising children. I'm definitely going to suggest that to a lot of my friends who just had kids. So a lot of my podcasting friends are just now having kids. So I'm definitely going to be suggesting your podcast.
Thank you. That's
Absolutely.
great. Yeah, and what you say about, like that getting started and the waiting, like that was me too. Like I had things in my mind for 10 years, but never really, 10 years ago, I didn't have podcasting as something I even knew existed. And then, then I have another idea, but then there's life that takes you away. And then, like I didn't act either for a long time until finally it like materialized. The things I like to do kind of is all wrapped up in podcasting. That's cool. Okay, now I've got somewhere to direct the ideas.
That's great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question here, because I could talk about this all day. So as you're going along, I know you're kind of new at this. You're just starting podcasting and whatnot, but what are some of the pitfalls or problems that you've come across over the last, since you've started?
How long do you have tonight?
Oh, I don't know. It's getting kind of late. No, just like,
I think for me as an individual, the biggest, I don't know if it's a pitfall, but I'll call it a struggle,
hmm,
is that I didn't have business in my background. I didn't have computers in my background. I wasn't on social media, so I never had those kind of things on my background. I didn't have audio in my background. So not only are the platforms and the hardware of doing stuff new to me, I didn't know the language to communicate about it. So when I have a question, even on the simple things, I didn't know the vocabulary to be able to ask the questions. So people would say to me, ask me if you have a question. I'd say, okay. I couldn't form the question. So, that has been the big learning curve, is to get an understanding of how does it all work and what is the vocabulary for it. So, like some people grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I did not. Some people grew up with business mindedness around them, or audio stuff, or like the current generation with computers around them. I'm
Oh
older
yeah.
than that. It's all been new to me in many ways. So that's been my biggest struggle, is that, like, I want my brain to learn faster. Like, I'm trying to put in so much information. I feel like it just flows over the top of the cup. So holding on to all that information.
And it's
Yeah.
tough to hold on to. Sometimes it really is tough to hold on to. It kind of comes at you like a hailstorm. It's just
Yeah.
like there's all this information is like, oh, I'll show you this. Wait a minute. Okay, well, now I got it. Okay, well, that's too much information. Hang on. Just give me just a second. I'm going to go over here. It could be overwhelming sometimes.
And that's exactly what it is. And I sought out coaches, and I found fabulous coaches. And then one person said to me, Dinalynn, you have found many coaches that will get people from 1 to 5, and they can go from 1 to 5 really fast. But you are not at 1 yet. You need to find the coach that is the 0 to 1. And the 0 to 1 is the big leap. And you've mentioned that book, and she told me, you need to go read that book. And I read it twice. And I thought to myself, yeah, this is a big leap for me, because so much of the personal growth part, on top of all the things that I just mentioned, was a challenge.
Absolutely. It's always a challenge. It's just it's part of the learning process, being able to get the information that you need that's pertinent, and get that out there first so you can actually cross that start line and get from the 0 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody, I'm sorry, it's shameless self plug. Sorry. If anybody's gets interested from getting to 0 to 1, that's actually where I specialize in my coaching, doingittodaycoaching.com. If
And
anybody
you've
wants to,
helped me some too. And I have
yes.
appreciated it. Yes, you
Yeah.
have. Just to kind of get my mind in one area, because when you're new, like, everything's a shiny object. And you know that when you hear you need to learn how to do emailing, and you need to know how to do your podcast, like all the different things you need to learn how to do, it comes in at equal volume, because you can't prioritize when you're brand new. I had no idea what the priority ought to be. So I would listen to this person and listen to that person. And each time I'd listen to somebody, I'd run down that trail for a while and then realize, oh, wait a minute, I can't go this trail any further. I have to go get the foundation.
Exactly. Exactly. Make sure you get your foundational things done first and then move on to, you don't want to overextend yourself. You want to get really good at one or two or three things that you're really, efficient at, and
Mhm.
then spread out to other things. That way you're not overwhelming yourself, and you could build those steps. You could build those blocks off of each other. So we got the podcasting. Okay, we now got the podcasting. The podcasting good. And let's go out to reaching out to my podcast listeners to understand what they're looking for. Okay, now let's talk about email. You want to build things instead of trying to pile one big pile on top of everything all at once. You want to turn that pile into stepping stones. So
Right.
so it's easier to manage, and then you're not missing anything too, because what happens when you put everything into a big pile, you start rooting through the pile. Oh, I missed something. Oh, there it goes. So
Yeah.
it's really important to build those building blocks. and
I think I
and
spent a lot of time there.
yeah, and the other thing too that you said, which was I'm glad you said something. Sometimes the question could actually be more important than the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're
Mm-hmm.
never going to get the answer unless you get the question right. And when you don't know what the question really is or how to actually verbalize the question, it could be very exasperating and sometimes bring you down, even because you're not sure how you're supposed to say this.
Mm-hmm.
So, I learned definitely listening to other people in other podcasts, learning from other people in audiobooks and things of that nature. Have been able to increase my vocabulary and to be able to ask the correct questions so I can move on with my entrepreneur adventure.
Absolutely. And I have learned that too from what your podcast. One of the things that has just really helped me is it's helped my heart in it. When I listen to other people say their struggle and that they couldn't hold on to all the information, or they didn't know how to say something, and they didn't know who to ask for help, and they didn't, like all the different things. I'm like, oh, me too, me too, me too, on all those different things. And I found it to be encouraging for me to realize, okay, they're somewhere, they're doing it, they're successful, and they still started out this way. So when I first heard of your podcast, I went and I specifically looked for, okay, the first episode, and then the year later, or the first one, and then the 6 months later, to hear, okay, so how did those people make progress?
Right.
And it was encouraging to me. So I've appreciated your podcast too.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate the kind words, and I'm going to be doing some more of those follow-ups. I am going to be doing some more of those follow-ups. They are coming here real soon.
Hey.
What I would like to talk about is influences and people that you look up to and people that help you keep moving in your entrepreneur adventure. Have you had anybody like that that kind of influences you or kind of keeps you moving forward?
I think I've been really fortunate. I've been meeting many, many fabulous people. Part of me hesitates to say because I'll forget somebody. Like I've been part of numerous groups where people have been helpful in various ways. Like some groups are really helpful to meet other people. Like I was going to Speakers Playhouse, you meet other people that are speaking. I've been in Power Partners, and you meet people that are going to help you in doing your thing. And I've been in a couple different podcasting groups where they say, okay, here's what I did, and here's how I handled the problem, and here's the direction to go, and here's how we do this thing. And so many more. Toastmasters group, trying to learn how to speak a little better with a little more fluidity. And there's more groups, and all of them have been influencers. And the person, I think, I don't know why I'm thinking of this right now, maybe because we just talked about it, but the person that said to me, you're at zero. The leap from 0 to 1 is so big. It is okay to say no to many people right now. Just focus on learning 0 to 1. And she was selling stuff. And so she advised me, don't buy any of this stuff. It's not for you yet. But again, I couldn't prioritize because I just knew that I didn't know any of what anybody was teaching. And I was supposed to learn it all. And she really, really impacted me too, because she came alongside and she saw me. She saw where I'm actually at. She saw me as the green beginner that I actually am. Whereas sometimes when I say to somebody, I'm more green than that, they would feel like I'm insulting myself. And I would feel like I'm just trying to be transparent. So she was a really big influencer. That was Ginny Trask. So yeah, but there's so many people that have been fantastic influencers for me.
What was her name again? I'm sorry.
That was Ginny Trask that said that to
Jenny
me.
Trask. Okay, shout out to Jenny Trask. Thank you so much for understanding us beginners. I actually might try to reach out to her too, because it sounds like she kind of understands us getting across the start line. So that's pretty awesome. So I appreciate that. One thing that you said, saying no is don't be afraid to say no to somebody or something, because when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. But on the other hand, if you're saying yes to something, what are you saying no to? We got to keep that in mind, because us being new, we can only handle so much information and doing so many appointments and things like that. So don't be afraid to say no. Saying no is okay.
And it was a hard thing to learn at first. Like, which things do I say no to?
Yeah, because right now, especially us as beginners, we want to say yes to everything, because we don't want to miss an opportunity. We don't want to say, oh no, and then all of a sudden, oh, we missed that opportunity. So we want to say yes to everything, but we just kind of keep in the back of our head, saying yes also means saying no. Sometimes it's saying no to a project that we're working on to take time for that. Yes, sometimes it's saying no to family time because we said yes to this other project. And sometimes that can overtake our family time or whatever. We really don't want to do that, especially when it comes to family, when it comes to our kids and our time with our family. That's very precious to us. We only have my virtual mentor, Pat Flynn, always says we only have 18 summers with our children before they're gone. So we have to really take into heart how much time we actually have with our children. We don't want to take time away from our children because we have something that, a business wise or something like that. Take that extra time and effort to be with our family, with our children, and that kind of thing. So once again, when you're saying yes to something, make sure you're not saying no to something that's more important.
Absolutely. Good advice.
All right. Thank you. All right. I know you're just getting started. You've come a long way to get to this start line,
Hmm. I think I
right?
have to.
You really have. Yeah, you've had a lot of different experiences, I think, just to get to the start line. But when will you know you've made it? When will you actually say, this is exactly where I wanted to be at this really exact time? What does that look like to you?
I think that bar actually is set perhaps kind of low because my like being there at this point is like, okay, when I'm going to get up in the morning, I know what to do for my business in a given day. I know what my goals are for right now. I know this month, this week, this year goal. I'm able to like see the picture. Right now, I'm, like everything is like a slap back, maybe that's the wrong way to say it. It's like somebody says, "Oh, but do you have these things you can submit to me?" And then I'm like, "Oh, I need to make them." And then how do I put them into the form that they want? And then how do I, so everything that I'm doing is still like after the fact, get it back out there. But when I have stuff that when somebody asks me for different things, I can say, yeah, I got that. I know what you're talking about. Yes, I know where my goals are. I know what I'm doing today. I know what the priorities are for today in order to get me to my goals. That's actually where my bar is at this point. Like, I want to get there. And then I'll be like, okay, I can really make bigger goals now. I won't feel, I think, like I'm scrambling as much as I feel like I scramble now.
Yeah, because scrambling is tough. It's tough
Yeah,
mentally, it's tough physically because you're all over the place. You're all over the place, and then when you're trying to do too many things, you end up getting nothing accomplished.
that's where I have my sights right now is to be trimming away the no, to be focused on the yes, to get clearer and clearer all the time about what I'm saying yes and no to. So it aligns, it fits, and I'm confident. And then maybe that's an unrealistic thing, but yet that's where I'm at. That's what I want.
No, that's very realistic.
I think it's necessary too for
Oh,
some sanity.
yeah, that's for darn sure. But to be clear on your goals, I mean, especially starting out, that's very, very important. That's a good goal to have. One thing I do want to say on this though is I actually did talked about this on a previous that I did. When you're setting your goals, I usually set my goals in threes. One that's really close by, one that I can know is very achievable, one that's kind of in the middle where I know it's going to take a little bit of work to do, but I know it's achievable. I can do it as long as I do the work. Then one that's way out there, that's like, it's you're reaching for the stars, but you're going to make it to the moon instead. That kind of goal, having that far out goal is kind of like where I've made it. That's where I'm looking at for me. So kind of keep that in mind too, because it really does give you a direction. And then having the small goal and the medium goal, that gives you a type of direction too, where you're going this direction towards that medium goal to get to the large goal.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It is. That's what I'm referring to with alignment,
Yes.
to kind of have myself a North Star and then understand my stepping stones to get there. That's, I think we're saying the same thing, but differently.
Yes. No, it's exactly right. So it's been validated, ladies and gentlemen. We both are saying the exact same thing. So let me ask you this question a different way then. What is your North Star? Do you have a North Star set for yourself?
My North Star at this point, no, I don't think I have something that's too much farther than I can see. I no, I think I can't say that because everything that I now have as a goal is something that is probably that middle goal, that stretch goal. Like I think I can reach that. But the goal that is like, I don't know how to reach that. I don't know if I can reach that. It's kind of like beyond my ability to imagine still.
No, that's okay. So that's something we need to work on.
Okay.
I want you to have that North Star kind of feel, that goal that's way out there that you can actually get. I don't want this to turn into a coaching, sorry. But but I want you to have that. I really do. I think having that North Star will give you a little more direction.
Work on that. We'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. This is one that I really like too. If you're just going along your entrepreneur adventure and you just run into somebody that wants to take the same adventure as you or something similar to it, what advice would you give them? What steps would you have them take?
It's funny you should ask that. Somebody just asked me this last week, how did you get into podcasting? I want to do that too. So he's going to come to my house and take a look at what I've got for recording equipment and stuff. That's what he's interested in on Saturday. And I was just thinking about that earlier today. And I guess the advice that I would give would be to get clear on, what the message is that you want to give. What area do you want to have as your, who are you speaking to, and what is your main message? Start kind of there. So anyway, we'll see. I think that's going to be after Saturday. I will know the answer to that because I will be answering those questions when he comes. And if I have, it's like I'm so new to this still that I guess I don't trust myself real well to give advice in something that I feel like I am still learning. I feel like I can say, okay, these are the things that I learned and this is what was helpful, but I still feel like such a beginner that I don't feel qualified to tell advice in this yet.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I felt the same way too when I first got started. But the one thing that I always thought about is once I get to a point, even if you're just getting started, there's always somebody one step behind me. And that
Yeah.
person that's one step behind you will want to know what you know. So that's the type of person, I mean, that's what you want to kind of keep in mind is, of course, you know this stuff because you've already done it already. You're that one step ahead of them. So don't be
Yeah.
afraid to tell them what you know at this point because they don't know that yet.
Right. Right. I just figure that like I'll just answer every question that he asks me, but yeah, that's what I figure I'm gonna do.
Yeah. That's what you, and then if you don't know the answer to it, then
Oh yeah, I'll just say I don't
just
know.
tell them, I really don't know, but you can go here to find out, or you can talk to this person and find out, or something. Give them a direction to go. So you,
Yeah, I now know who the 1 to 5 people are and who the 0 to 1 people are. So
yep,
we'll see where he's at when he talks to me on Saturday, if he's a 1 to 5 or a 0 to 1.
they're pretty quick to pick out too.
I'll find out.
Also, don't and God, I'm gonna go right into coaching again. I'm sorry. Don't feel like that you're an imposter because when you say I don't know and I'm afraid to not know this, don't feel like I'm not qualified to talk about this. There are things that you are qualified to talk about even as a beginner. So don't give in to imposter syndrome because if you give into imposter syndrome now, you're going to give into it later eventually, and that's going to stop you because you know what? That's what stopped me. I actually put everything on, not put on hold, but I stopped advancing myself because I was going through a very serious imposter syndrome myself. I mean, who am I? I've only been doing this for a little while. I don't have any kind of qualifications. I mean, you have more education than I do as far as that's concerned. Why do I have that kind of feeling? But once I stopped owning imposter syndrome, my imposter syndrome, I am suffering from imposter syndrome. Once I stopped saying that verbiage, for some reason I felt like there was a weight that was lifted off my shoulders because I'm not taking responsibility for something that's so negative.
Sure. That makes
So
sense.
yeah, so don't give into imposter syndrome, I guess, would be the moral of the story.
Okay.
Okay, all right, you're just starting your podcast.
Mhm.
And I'm going to use the podcast as the example. I know you got a couple other things going, but the podcast is what I'm going to kind of concentrate on. So
Okay.
say I'm like looking through Spotify or Apple Pods or anything like that, and I see your podcast, but I also see a couple other podcasts that are kind of podcasting in that similar kind of niche.
Mhm.
If I listen to all three podcasts, why should I listen to you? What's the one thing that you have that these other podcasts don't?
I think when you are looking at parenting, and that's the topic, the genre that you would be in if you're going to be looking at my podcast, then you are looking for help communicating with your kid. If your child is having behavior problems, you are wanting to communicate differently with them. What you've been doing probably isn't working. That's why you're on the podcast looking for help. Some of the podcasts are going to be talking maybe about behaviors and all this kind of stuff. Some things are going to overlap with what it is that I teach. But my focus is the communication strategies that you can use that develop the connection between your heart and your child's heart. And it changes the way you interact, because I want parents to look at their language, the words they use, kind of like you just said to me, be careful for the words that you use.
Mhm.
And when you communicate with your child with words that convey, oh, discovery, oh, I didn't understand, you didn't understand toast, you grabbed your toes, like you come to recognize that they're exploring, they're learning, they are challenged also, but they don't know they're even challenged because they didn't know they didn't understand. So often they are just being curious. And if you can get into that mindset where you have curiosity and you respond to them with just genuine curiosity, not the why that you say, why'd you do that? Meaning do something different, but rather, why'd you do that, with the belief that they have a reason. It develops that connection and that belief with your kiddo. And then in that, they respond sooner. They start to respond better. They start to listen better because they are seen and they are heard. So there's some of the foundational pieces in my podcast that's going to draw in that connection with your kid, and they will be able to communicate with you and you with them better. The foundation is, with kiddos that have speech and language impairment, but it works for all kids. In fact, I've had parents come back to me and say, I did that with my spouse and it worked. Because really we're validating the humanity of one another. So it's good.
Bravo. Bravo.
Thank you.
Dinalynn, that's amazing. Thank you so much. That's just, my heart's a flutter right now. That's really good. I'm going to listen to your I mean, I've already listened to your podcast, but if I wasn't, I would be now. So
Good.
what was that? What episode was that where he had that, where it was the reading to the child? Was that episode 7?
Episode 4.
4.
4. 1-year-old language learning with a book.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
If anybody wants to start with anything and know exactly what she's about, that's a good start. I mean, listen to 0, 1, and 2 and all that. But episode 4 was one that really hit home for me because it really got me thinking about how to communicate with the child, not just read the book to them, but have the child understand the book. So I really do recommend that episode 4 of your podcast.
And in 7, I talk a little bit about that too, because it was dual language learning home. So I referred to episode 4 and did an example for it. So
that's what it was.
That's why you remembered 7. Yes.
It all comes together. Okay.
It does.
All right. So here we are. I love this question. This is my favorite question, and I did steal this one, so sorry, everybody. What is the one question that you wish I would have asked you, but I didn't? I always forget one really good, important question, and my guess is like, oh, I really wished he asked me this question because I had the perfect answer for you. So, do you have a question you wish I would have asked you, but didn't?
What book do you read that really made a big difference?
Oh, that's a good one. I really like that one. What is, because I had a book like that too. It really made a big difference in my life, and that was The Big Leap. So what was your book that really made a big difference in your life?
I will say the big leap has made a huge difference in my life, actually. And
Oh,
I wanted
good.
to say that because that was the one that I know that you particularly advocate for. I have read some other books too. And I will say there's one that was by Shiraz Babu that has made a really big difference. And that was Rewriting Reality.
Ooh, okay.
And he talks about how when you believe something, then you see it versus seeing it and then believing it. So when you believe something is going to be, you tend to walk in that way and create some of those realities for yourself because you're already believing that it's going to happen.
Fantastic. I'm gonna clip that out. That's great. I really appreciate you saying that. I'm gonna definitely look that book up. That sounds like a fantastic book for a good mindset.
It is. And it was very helpful. That's another book that I read twice because it was worth it.
That's awesome. All right, thank you for answering that question that you came up with.
You're welcome.
All right, so here are some of the fun now. Here we go. So at this point, I want to ask you, I'm going to follow up with you in the next 6 months. So in 6 months, where do you see you, yourself, your podcast, your business? What do you have set up for yourself in the next 6 months?
I'm going to reach in that next 6 months everything that I just told you that I wanted as like when I've arrived. I am going to have my goals like short, medium, and North Star. I'm going to be able to know what I do on a daily, weekly basis that gets me there to be able to figure out the steps along the way. I am going to know how to use all this recording equipment without having to do and redo because I missed something in the steps or I erase it accidentally. I am going to know how to communicate with people that I want to have on my podcast and know how to edit and publish without quite as much effort. Those are the things that in 6 months is going to be really solid.
There you go. I love the conviction in your voice. I will have
I
this done.
will.
That's great. So what we're going to do is in 6 months, I'm going to follow up with you again. We're going to have another conversation just like this, and we're going to see if we actually made those goals. But it sounds like to me you
We
will.
will.
Yes.
We will.
Or more, right? My dad used to,
Well, I'm hoping more.
yeah, my dad always says, always say and more or more. And it's.
Yeah. I do expect that there's going to be more because what I just said is like where I've had all my energy and I am totally focused on that. So maybe it'll be sooner than that. We'll see.
We'll see. I'm really excited to follow up with you in 6 months and see and have that all come to fruition.
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
right.
Looking forward to it also.
All right. All right, Dinalynn, it's time. It's your time to shine now. I want you to go ahead and advertise yourself, advertise your podcast, and whatever you're putting together for you.
Thank you, parents. Anytime that you are struggling with your kiddos, come join me at the Language of Play. You will be able to learn about how to communicate and connect with your kids through simple strategies to help them listen better.
There you go. And what's the name of the podcast?
Sorry, on the podcast called The Language of Play.
The Language of Play. And how do we get a hold of you personally? If we want to ask you questions or anything like that, how do we get hold of you?
Hello at thelanguageofplay.com.
Oh, I like that.
Yes.
Hello. Right. Are you working any of these social medias right now?
I am learning Facebook a little bit better.
Mhm.
And I have been on LinkedIn, but I haven't updated my profile for a year. But that's pretty much where I'm putting that's it for social media so far. I've been really focused on trying to do the other learning, which is how to do the podcasting.
Right, right. So if we want to find you on Facebook, what do we look under?
Dinalynn Rosenbush
Okay.
at this point. But I want to open a page that is the Language of Play. So someday you'll see that one. I also bought the domain, thelanguageofplay.com, but there's no website there yet. I just have the domain. So if you're looking at or hearing this in the future, go ahead and look at thelanguageofplay.com and you will find something sometime.
Eventually.
Yes.
All right. Dinalynn, thank you so much for being the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I really think we taught some great experiences to a lot of the school believers out there. And thank you just so much for doing what you do.
Thank you so much too for having me. It's a joy to be here. And I feel quite privileged to be able to share this early part in conversation because of how much I benefited listening to other people's early parts in their journeys. And thank you for being that person that exposes the early parts of business building.
You're very welcome. All right. All right, school believers, thank you so much. And make sure you stay tuned for the wrap up. All right, everybody. Thank you. All right, everybody. That was Dinalynn. Man, she was amazing. She had some fantastic stories about children. And I really like the fact that she's out there to help other people learn about children, take the experiences that she's had with children, and integrating all her knowledge into finding out new ways to be able to communicate with our children. Love the book story. Make sure you check that out in episode 4 and episode 7 of The Language of Play on all podcasting stations. Look her up. And I just got to say this real quick. I really want to thank you, Dinalynn, for the fantastic positive words you've had about the impact that the Undiscovered Entrepreneurs had on you and all the school believers out there. Thank you just so much. She really has fantastic ideas. And I think one of the things I really like talking about too is the coaching from 0 to 1. That means a lot to me too, because that's kind of where I kind of set myself for coaching, is coaching the 0 to 1. That's a really important piece because that's where we need to kind of get started. So it's really important to be done. So I just love everything that she's done, and I really hope she continues on. I can't wait to see where she ends up in the next 6 months because she has some fantastic goals for herself. So I'm really excited about that. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about that special message that I have for you all that I'm really excited to talk about. Starting next week, we are going weekly. We're increasing our shows to bring you more information about starting your entrepreneur adventure. So what we're going to be doing is, I talked a little bit about this in the last episode, but the next episode you're going to see is coming up on Tuesday. This Tuesday coming up. So no more waiting 2 weeks. And you're going to hear a coaching that I've done. And then the week after that, you're going to hear a new Undiscovered Entrepreneur. And then the week after that, you're going to see or hear another coaching. So we're going to go back and forth a little bit to kind of figure out what we're doing here. And I really hope that you all can learn more, even more about entrepreneurship and how you could possibly get started. Also, I'm really looking forward to episode 40 that's coming out here real soon. And that is going to be a very special event that I'm putting on for anybody and everybody. I'll have more information for you on the next episode. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so you do not miss it. So what I'd like to know here from you at this point is what your actual takeaways from the episode is. So for example, what is your North Star? I know my North Star and where I'm headed, and knowing where your North Star is will definitely give you a place to go. So tell me about your North Star. Look down in the comments or me on Twitter and tell me where your North Star is. So if you want to get a hold of me for anything and everything, please contact me on Twitter, which is at DJScoob2021. And we're still looking for that first Facebook School Believer. So once again, go to tuepodcast.net/FBScoob if you want to join my Undiscovered Entrepreneur Facebook group. That way we can help each other out. You could also start seeing some of my newest stuff on Instagram at UEPodcast2021. And if you want to see some of the new TikToks I got going out, yes, I'm still doing these weird TikTok things. Same place, UEPodcast2021. All right, school believers, thank you so much for another fantastic episode. And I'm looking forward to that new coaching episode that's coming out in 1 week. So here we go. It's getting real, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, school believers, for another fantastic episode. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.